Hi guys, today we're going to be talking about Japanese Notan. Notan is a word literally translated that means concentrated, weak harmony. And you're probably wondering, what on earth does that mean? So Japanese would make their art with ink and brush. And ink straight out of the bottle is extremely concentrated and black. So concentrated represents the dark, and weak, if you took the ink and you diluted it with a lot of water, you would make a weak wash, right? So you have your light, you have your concentrated, which is the dark, you have your weak, which is the light. And they would make these masterpieces with their ink, and they would focus on the harmony between the concentrated and the weak, the light and the dark. And most art, even nowadays, throughout history, has a balance, right? That's one of our principles of design that we're studying, is emphasis and contrast. This concept, when we look at art, we notice the dark and the light values in a piece of work, and they give it a strength, right? When you have, it leads our eyes to certain points in a piece of work. And so the Japanese had this term, notan, which they used to describe this harmony between the light and the dark, this contrast, this balance between negative and positive space. And we are going to make notans to explore this concept of positive, negative space. So I'm going to bring one in here that I worked on, and see if I can get this out of the way. And here you notice I started with just a square, 6x6 square of black paper. And I cut out these pieces, and I flipped over the positive, and it gave me a negative image. So we're going to make some of these, but there's some words that we want to talk about. We can make our images geometric shapes, right? Here's a geometric one. We could do organic shapes, right? We can do organic shapes. We can do a simple, something simple. We can do something complex. And as you notice, the more complex you get, the more interesting it is to look at, right? But sometimes starting off with something super complex is a little difficult. So maybe start off with something simple and get more complex as you get comfortable with this technique. As you notice here, we've got the positive, the negative, the positive, the negative, the positive, the negative, okay? And it creates this beautiful harmony between the light and the dark. The contrast makes it pop. So I'm going to go back to this first page because you need to decide a few things. You need to decide if you're going to make your image geometric or organic, if you're going to try a simple one or just go straight for a complex. You're going to decide if you're going to do a single cut. Do you see how I just cut one and flipped it? Or are you going to try to do a double? So I cut this one, then I cut that one. That's a double. And this one's a triple. Now, if you really want to, you can do many. See, this one just kept going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So you also need to decide if you just want to cut from one side of your paper, two sides of your paper, three sides, or all sides of your paper. So here's just from one side. Here, this is also, each of these, this one was just from one side. This is just from one side, but here's a double cut. This is a single. Here, this one's cut from two sides of the paper. This one's from three sides. And then this one's from all four. Again, the more complex, the more interesting it is to look at, right? Some things you will also need to note. These are all cut from the sides, never any of the corners. We don't cut these corners off. You won't get the same effect. Another thing you notice is pretend there's this invisible line here. What do we call this? Do you guys remember? This is showing symmetry. So this is a mirror image, and you need to line everything up against these edges, right? You cut it, you flip it over, it all along this edge. And they need to be glued right along each other on this midline. We don't cut from over here, because if we cut from over here and flipped it over, that is not the same effect. That's not what we're after. Everything is cut from this edge of the paper right here, okay? So if I wanted to do a double cut, I would have cut from here and flipped it over. Those are two important things. Always cut from the midline, never cut your corners. All right, let's get a piece of paper and try this out, okay? Here's my paper. Now I want you to visualize. We're not even going to take a pencil. You could do a pencil if you wanted, but I prefer that you just use your imagination. Some people love to cut things like leaves or a heart or an insect even, because those are all very symmetrical things, right? But today we're just going to go for some abstract shapes. And like I said, we don't cut off the corner. What just happened there? If I flipped that, does that work? Doesn't really work. So if that happens to you, you're like, whoops, I made a mistake. I want you just to cut that off, set this aside, and not worry about it. Just cut and use this, okay? We're not even gonna worry about that little mistake. We're just gonna move right along. So let's say I don't wanna get too complicated to start off with. I wanna just try to play it safe and do my image. Simple. There's one cut, okay? And then I'm actually going to try to make this a little bit more straight, okay? Just like that. Beautiful. Positive, negative, nice contrast. And then you're like, I think I'm going to go for a double cut. So let's do a double cut. And then you're like, oh, I just want to make sure I've got this right. So line that up. Yep, that's right. And match it up. It's like a puzzle. Just like that. Look at that. Now, if you glue them like this, does that get the same effect? Not at all. Remember that invisible little midline there? We want to line it up and make it look good, just like that. Let's say you want to go for a third cut. Remember to match it up, flip, match it up, flip, and I'm going to go for one more. Make sure lined up. Nope, not quite. There we go, and flip. There's my midline. There you go. See? So you get just this lovely image, this beautiful harmony and contrast, right? With your positive and negative space, everything's lined up on the midline. And like I said, you can have fun. You can do them from multiple edges. You can get super intricate if you want. But always remember, see how many little teeny tiny pieces? You have to fit it all together like a puzzle. Because you may be like, ooh, I have all these pieces. What do I do? How do I remember? Just line them up like a puzzle piece and flip. flip. Okay, take the next piece, line it up and flip. And you're going to glue them down as you go, okay? Use your glue stick and glue them down as you go. Line it up and flip. Line it up and flip. There you go. Go for it.